Hey, this is Jon Leon Guerrero. Our guest today is Dr. Jason Piccolo. He's a former special agent with the Department of Homeland Security who patrolled the southern border and eventually worked at ICE headquarters to protect human beings and combat the flow of narcotics. He's now the author of Unwavering, a border agent's journey from hunter to hunted, in which he chronicles his service to our country leading up to his endurance of the backlash he faced after blowing the whistle on policies that failed to fully and competently vet the sponsors taking custody of unaccompanied immigrant children. Dr. Piccolo is now the purveyor of the Protector Store, which is protectorstore.com. It's, of course, a veteran-owned small business, which we love to support, and where you can get clothing and accessories to show your support of the protectors, the veterans, the first responders, and the law enforcement officers in your life. My brother and I like to drink whiskey together, and I found some glasses there that are perfect. Anyway, Jason Piccolo is a thoughtful guy who's given us all a career of service for all the right reasons, and he continues to fight for the American values of justice and humanity. He deserves our gratitude for that, and he gets my support and Pete's for sure, and we love him. We think you will too. Here's Dr. Jason Piccolo.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Morales.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is Jon Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Jason Piccolo. You're listening to the Break It Down Show. Check out my store online, theprotectorstore.com.
And now, the Break It Down Show with Jon Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, go down to the Protector Store and check out what Jason's doing there. He's an author. Just literally, like, was it last week, Jason? You dropped your most recent book, and you are a well-traveled, resume-heavy guy. I'm going to call this a spy versus spy episode because both of us have done collection, and I want to get into that. But give us an idea about your podcast. You deal with first responders. You've been a Homeland Security guy. What would you say? What's the essence of what you do? Let me ask you that.
Well, the podcast is great. It's called the Protector Podcast, or Protectors, actually. And what I do is I interview people who are in the military, first responders, and law enforcement, and those that support them. And, you know, it's a non-political show. We're looking to talk about inspirational stories, kind of their background, stuff like that. And just kind of show that, hey, you know what, these guys and girls are out there doing the right thing, and they're protecting our homeland. And why I call it the Protectors, because they're going, you know, they're deploying here and abroad, whether that's in a law enforcement, you know, in a military, or responding as a fireman or emergency worker to protect us. So hence the Protectors.
I like it, man. It's a great concept, and you know, we love our first responders just like we love our veterans and our troops. But how do you really get to know these guys? How do you try to understand them? You know, it's easy to say we support and thank you and all those things, but getting to know these folks, know where their struggles are, know where their effort is, and how you can lend a hand. That's a big thing that we owe the community at large, is to how do you help them help us?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get through with the show. You know, I'm on about 13 episodes now. I was lucky enough to have you on there. So, you know, there's a different aspects, different guests. So it's kind of cool.
I was lucky enough to be on your show. You kidding me? I think it's such an honor to get invited to anything. I think it's just the best. And I always
the same way I feel.
Yeah, I always do my best to come on and give them everything I got. And I don't care if it's episode 0. It doesn't matter to me. Like, if you're going to try, let me not be in your way. Let me help you out. And if your show takes off, awesome. You know, great for you and still good for me. And if your show doesn't, it's no skin off my nose to get a chance to be invited somewhere. I love it.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing next with this Protector Store. It's actually Protector Store. So there's no the, but I always call it the Protector Store.
Gotcha.
The Protector was taken. But that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm not trying to make any like real profit off that thing. Is I'm trying to find good organizations that I could donate my profits to. So then I could spin off from the podcast, you know, write books, chill. But the store is basically, I'm going to be trying to give away, you know, at least 10-20% right off the bat to nonprofits I could find.
No, that's great. That's a great concept. Let's talk a little bit about when you have these guys on. I should say, when you have these guests on in the first responder world, people like me that are warriors that have been in conflict zones, is there a thread that you've gathered from 13 episodes? Or are you still trying to figure out what that might be?
Well, one thing I've noticed is they all want to give back. There's not one person that I've talked to that hasn't wanted to shine light on their story in order to, provide like a baseline, like not just a baseline. What I'm trying to say is like they're trying to use their story to inspire others to keep moving forward. So the big thread is just keep moving forward, regardless of what hits you in the head. Just keep going forward.
Yeah. And when it comes to having the conversations that are there, obviously there's a lot of contentiousness in our world these days. And I'm trying to get a handle on, I mean, as a guy that's worked Homeland Security, we have immigration issues, but the people that I see that have the biggest issues with it typically aren't the people that are doing the actual work day to day. It turns out, ground truth is the ultimate truth. And
exactly.
And I don't want to say that it's okay to separate families, but on the ground, the reality of what that is going to be something that none of us can understand unless you're there doing it. So
no, that's exactly what I'm trying to say is like whenever, some of your audience may have seen me on TV here and there, but you'll always see the common thread of what I talk about is, look, there are bad people out there and there are good people and there are legitimate asylum claims coming up to the border. But there's also really bad folks out there who are trying to do really bad things to good people. So will there be a solution to the border crisis? And I call it a crisis because it's just not that border line. It's going south and it's going north into our country. There's just a lot going on.
Yeah, no, there is a lot going on. And the other thing that I know as, because I've done a lot of, let's call it vetting and screening of people wanting access to American compounds. I haven't done any screening or vetting for people trying to come into the nation, but it's the same work. And when someone not in the know says, well, we got to vet these people. I don't know if you've done any vetting, but.
Well, I actually went to, and that's one thing, if you Google my name, you'll see that I was a whistleblower at one time. And one thing I did blow the whistle on was vetting at the border. Went to Senator Charles Grassley's office, and I explained to them the whole vetting process of how it wasn't working, especially at the time there was a whole influx of Syrians coming across the border.
Right.
And I said, look, if you've never been encountered by law enforcement or intelligence here or abroad, there's not going to be any record of you. You're going to look like you're legitimate.
Yeah.
So how can you really vet someone without actually sitting them down across the table from you with the right people to ask the right questions?
Yeah.
And the right people weren't asking the right questions. And there was just too many. And I imagine the same thing is happening nowadays where you don't have human cells down there. I mean, you do, but you still have those problems where you don't have everybody at the same table who might have the same piece of the puzzle and put it together and get a clear picture of who's coming across the border.
Yeah. The other thing is we're not magicians. When we do sit across from somebody and we ask them questions, it's harder to get a job at fill in the blank corporation, IBM. It's harder to get a job at Spotify than it is to go through a vetting thing. Like, yes, you're going to get fingerprinted and there's some other, biometric things, but there are way more interviews. Like the 6-part interview is a common thing in corporate America. And you're going to sit across from me. I'm going to look at you and decide, is this person going to harm somebody ever?
Yeah. Now you're talking about the border where you have, let's say you have 100,000 people coming up to the border right now.
Okay. 100,000 people.
And let's say 98,500 are from Central America, 2,000 are from South America, and the remaining 500 or so, you can do the math later on.
Right.
The remaining 500 or so are from overseas. Because a lot of people don't realize a huge transit spot is to fly into Brazil or Cuba and then make your way over to Central America and come up the same traffic corridors as the regular migration patterns.
Right.
So let's say you have 500 people at any one time. How are you going to get enough people to vet or interview those people? That's going to be over 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And as well as I do that you're not going to do any serious interview / interrogation in 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, let's spend a lot of time right here because you're 100% right. Again, it's harder to get a job at IBM. So you're going to sit in front of me and I've got a panel of questions that somebody who's never done this job or hasn't done it in a long time is giving me to ask. And so I typically don't ask those questions because not that I'm not a rule follower, but I have to do my work the way I do it. Right. And so you're right. There's 30 minutes. Let's say there's 60 minutes of questions. And then I have to stop. I have to write a report. And so if I'm working, let's say I'm working 10-hour days, 12-hour days, whatever it's going to be, right? I may be doing, and I'm completely worn out at the end of these. You're working me hard at 12 hours. I may be doing 6 interviews a day. And
don't forget, you're a government employee, so you're not working at 12 hours a day.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just,
No, I know. I threw a wrench right in there.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like, oh, you're not allowed to work 12 hours or you quickly go into comp time and everything else. Yeah. So in 8 hours, again, you're not getting the 6 interviews if they're longer than half an hour. There's just too much because the report writing takes as long, at least in my experience, takes as long as everything
else. Now, backtrack a little bit. You have 500 people coming in from 40 or 50 different countries, speaking 40 or 50 different dialects.
Wait, they don't speak English?
And then what you have to do is you have to get on the line, and then you're doing an interview based on, a telephonic translation on someone on speakerphone probably.
Yeah.
And then as well as I do, if you're going to speak to someone, you can't speak to, John from Syria the same way you're going to speak to John from Germany.
Yeah.
There's different ways to do interviews, especially when it comes to, let's say you're trying to hunt out a Muslim extremist. You're not going to come directly at them. You're going to have to work around,
Yeah. So let's again spend some time here. Let's understand this. So there's this giant line of people out the door, and let's just say for round numbers, let's say I can reliably do 5 a day, with many days where I don't get to 5 because it's just logistically not possible. And there are no days when I do 7. Like that's just never going to happen. So I'm doing 5 to 6 interviews, and everybody's stoked about this. And there's how many people did you say in a month are coming up?
No, we're talking a day.
Oh, you mean 100,000 people?
No, not 100,000. Let's say we're going to do 1,000 aliens from other than Mexican, other than Central American, other than South America. So say 1,000 a month.
Right. Okay. So there must be at least 250 screeners because somebody's always going to be hurt. Someone's always on vacation. Someone's always having a baby. Yep. So you have to have 250 people at this one point of reception. Are there ever 250 people, screeners sitting around?
No, not when it comes to when you're actually going to sit. You're lucky to have, a handful.
Right.
And I'm actually looking up our DH. We could, I'm sure you could post something online later on about how many aliens are coming in from outside of Mexico and Central America, South America. But the numbers are high.
And
that's one of the things I brought in. I said, you know what? And this was 2016. And they're like, well, what's going on down at the border? I'm like, well, you have the FBI, have OGA.
Yeah.
You have ICE, who has, trained intel people down there, but not everybody is on the same, how are you going to vet someone if you don't even have a suspicion of where they're coming from, what village, what tribe, whatever anything's coming from?
Yeah, right.
Than what they admit to you. And they all have the same cover story. Now, I'll give you a scenario. And this is one of the scenarios I put into my letter, into the email, because I was going back and forth with Grassley's office for a long time about other things. And I said, look, here's a scenario. Muhammad from a small Ethiopian village travels through a family associate. His end state, he wants to be in the United States. We don't know if he's coming here for bad means or good means. All we know is this is the story he says. He says he goes, he meets his family friend. They bring him to an embassy. He gets a travel document. A lot of times it's not legit. He transit from Ethiopia via smuggler or via family friend to Dubai. And from Dubai, he goes to Brazil. Now, Brazil is where he hires another smuggling group. This smuggling group brings him up with other associates from all over the world to Guatemala, and they get connected with another smuggling group that's going to transit them up through Mexico. Now, they all know they're going to get apprehended when they get to Mexico, and they're going to be given a transit visa in Mexico to get through the country. Now, a lot of people don't realize that Mexico gives out transit visas. That visa gets them to the U.S. border, and that's where they turn themselves in. They don't try to sneak in. They just, hey, you know what? I'm here to claim asylum or whatever. Now, when they're interviewed, they say that their mom, cousin, uncle sold a car to get $20,000. This is a common theme. They sold a car to get $20,000 to pay for that trip from their small village in Ethiopia to get to the United States. Because that's probably about how much it's going to cost you
Sure.
to travel overseas, and with all the smuggling fees and everything else, $20,000. I don't know about you, but coming from a small village in Ethiopia, it's probably tough to get a $20,000 up and running. So how can you tell whether or not these people are getting they're going to work off that $20,000? And two, are they coming here for legit means? Or are they coming here for, hey, you know what? I'm just coming for the better life.
Yeah. And, again, let's back up a little bit with that complex story. We have that panel of questions, which is completely coachable to the next person. And so now I'm asking questions that people already know I'm going to ask, and I'm still trying to determine if this person has nefarious intent. And we can say, oh, well, just let everybody come in. But that's just not reality, because if you do that, bad people are going to come in and they're going to do bad things. Mm-hmm. Also, when bad people show up at your door, guys like Jason and I, we want to know who they are so we can turn them and use them for our advantages.
Exactly. And that is a huge part of the border puzzle that we could be exploiting. And I'm sure they're exploiting it, but are they going to find the right person that they could turn? Now, You do have some options. One option is, ICE detains these people indefinitely until they see a judge and their case is adjudicated. Two, you put them on what they call an alternatives to detention. That's your ankle bracelet / GPS. And three is you just release them. And, four is you could throw a foreigner, turn them back to Mexico, but that's not going to happen. And the other thing, too, is if they're part of a family unit, you can only detain a family unit for 20 days as part of the Flores agreement or amendment.
Right.
So either way, they're out there. So I always told people, I'm like, you know what? Throw them on an ankle bracelet, and then you at least track their movements. And for a collection aspect, that's perfect. Then you know who they're meeting with.
Sure.
You have addresses. They're going to give you phone numbers. They're supposed to give you sponsors, everything else. So that's just more data to collect.
Yeah. Now, what happens if
everybody on the same sheet of music? And this is pre 9/11 talk right now. Is everybody on the same sheet of music?
Right. Well, that's the thing, right? Like the bigger picture, and I want to get back to the logistics of managing immigration, but the bigger picture is we all sort of want the same thing, but we absolutely disagree on the means. Like we all want new Americans. We understand that the American dream is a big part of who we are, but everybody's got NIMBY tendencies. Like, hey, we'll take all of the Syrian refugees here in Orange County. No, we won't. There's no county that's like, we would love that. We would love a bunch of people that are extra legal. So, but let's get back to the real challenges of immigration, because to find great Americans, you have to have a process. You have to, so that we can get them help, because there's so much help for these folks. Because you and I both know that, yes, immigrants have a great track record of success, but there is also a lot of stress along the way. It's not daisies and fresh fruit and everything else. There's a lot of hard work. These people make a huge gamble, a huge bet, and extra legal is being nice on some of the things that do happen. And as citizens, we want them here, but also we have to protect one another from someone who's on the edge of survival, because those people are in dangerous places and make dangerous decisions.
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing is, and that's 99% of the time I'm on TV and they ask me this question, they'll say, hey, what do you think we should do? And I said, we need bipartisan immigration reform.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's never going to happen. Well, then I'm like, you know what? Instead of taking a 1,000-page document and dropping it on someone's desk at like midnight the day before the deadline, take a 20-page document, piecemeal this thing, give a clear path to whoever wants to come into the country. Needs a clear path. They need clear direction, because right now, and that's why you're seeing high numbers right now, is because they know there is no real immigration rule of law right now. It's get your foothold into the country before something either passes pro or negative. Because if you're on the outside looking in, when anything does pass, whether it's pro or negative, then you're out on the outside. So that's why you're seeing 100,000 a month coming in. We're going to be probably pushing 1 million this year. These numbers were never seen like this before, ever. I mean, even in the 1990s, when the border was going nuts, the numbers weren't up to like 100,000 a month. And we did erect a huge wall back then. You're from California, and a lot of your audience is probably California. And the 1993-94 is when Operation Gatekeeper started back in San Diego. And that was a 14-mile fence from the Otay border, Otay Mountains down to the Pacific Ocean. That's 14 miles. Now, before that, all the traffic that was coming up, and by traffic I mean migration patterns, was running up the 805 and the 5 highway.
Yeah.
And they're running through Chula Vista. They're running through suburbs of San Diego unfettered.
Yeah.
But what that fence did was it pushed traffic to the east. And then you'll notice that not only did it push the traffic, it brought economic prosperity to the town of Chula Vista,
right,
which is a suburb of San Diego. Now, Chula Vista had erected thousands of houses, brand new homes in the 2000s, because there was no more migration traffic coming through those neighborhoods. Houses, malls, everything you can imagine. So, yes, I mean, if you want to hit on a question of walls and all the other stuff, they do help move migration patterns. So, yeah, it's this whole problem is just super complex. You can't, and that's the thing I always try to tell people. I'm like, you know what? It's not just migration patterns, it's narco patterns, it's money going south. It's the whole border is just a big, huge thing we could talk about 20 hours on. Only touch the tip of the...
Yeah, because we're still back there with a line out the door longer than we can process each day.
Yes.
5 to 6 people. Again, of those 5 to 6 people that are on staff as vetting people that are federal employees, one of them is going to be sick. One of them's going to be having a baby, and so that line is basically never ending. So now you create the situation where people are incented to not go through the system. They're incented to find a way around it because we haven't created the capacity to receive all these people. And again,
that's when they get in, they tell their story, they stick to their story, they get released, they're given a hearing date to see an immigration judge, and they just never show up.
Right. Yeah. And at least if they had a tracking system on them, you can at least tell when they took it off.
Exactly.
Like this person ended up somewhere in Kentucky.
Now let's do a little real world human here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Now we're talking just vetting these guys. Well, not vetting. We're just talking about them.
Yeah.
What about, collection? We could, nothing in this world, in the intelligence realm, actually in the criminal realm, happens without a human source.
Right.
Now, we could be recruiting sources all day long if you give them like a special visa, you parole them in. So we could have a human factory down at the border where we can get everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
To do collection for us overseas, after we quote unquote vet them.
Yeah. Okay. So we have the ability to create sources and maybe shorten their timeline, because the other thing, Johnny Walker is a friend of mine and he was an interpreter. Granted, he's the greatest interpreter story that anybody's ever heard because he's become famous. He can pin a trident on his chest and all this stuff, but it took him 10 years to get his citizenship.
Yep.
And he has friends at the very highest levels of the government. Secretary Mattis, Secretary of Defense, he's not Secretary of Defense anymore, but he knows that guy's name personally because part of Johnny's portfolio ended up on his desk. So if you're not,
he can't get in,
right? Exactly. This guy is cared for. He's part of the SEAL family, and we're struggling to get him in. There's definitely barriers somehow, some way, in a massive system that are making it exceptionally hard for people to get in, and more and more people are wanting to come. And again, understand this. This is for my friends listening. I'm very pro-immigration, but if you are a bad person, even if you come and you maybe want to change your ways, you're going to lie when you get here. You're going to make a story up and, whatever. You're on an assignment from MS-13, actually a thing, and you're going to come up and open up a kiosk and sell drugs and mayhem. Like that actually is something that happens, right? But you're not going to tell the truth. You're not going to be like, oh, you got me, I'm an MS-13, or, oh, I'm a nefarious character looking to assassinate people in Miami because of the drug or whatever it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Those people are never going to be honest, and they're going to be very good at hiding it from me. And I keep in mind, I can only do so many interviews a day. It's mind-numbing work. It's the same thing over and over again. I'm somehow supposed to divine some kind of threat from somebody based upon a picture, an interview over a phone, like with the translator. It's an exceptionally hard process to get wrong, let alone get right.
Well, add into the fact that, I brought up before cultural geography.
Boy, yeah.
And, you can't, there's too many people. I don't even know what we could do to deploy down to the border. And we're not using, as far as I know, military interrogators down there. And even if you do have a military interrogator and you get PFC such and such, just graduated DLI, and he knows a certain dialect, does he know how to do a clear-cut, CI-based interrogation or even law enforcement? No. I mean, so yes, the bottom line is the border is broke. And, just for your friends out there, I'm, as someone who was Border Patrol, ICE, and everything else you can imagine over the past, 19, 20 years, I'm very pro-immigration. But the thing is, at one point in my career, I found out that there are some very evil people out there.
Yeah.
That will do anything to maim, harm, or kill you.
Yeah.
And without even thinking twice, if you get in their path, and they're not coming here to target mom and pop, but if mom and pop gets in their way, mom and pop is going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, there's people out there playing for real. I can attest to this. When we were out and killing bad guys in Iraq, we didn't always kill the right person, for sure. But there were people over there that absolutely had evil intent towards anybody who wasn't them. And that included their neighbors, anybody. So there really are very, very horrible people that will gladly kill people to get what they want. Those people actually exist. And they would love to come here, maybe for a second chance, but maybe, and then do you want to give that person a shot? And would you rather them be illegal, or would you rather them go through a process where we get our hands on them and we try to, rehabilitate them and provide them with a path towards a sane life? Because I'll tell you right now, Johnny Walker is a very dear friend of mine, but he's a wild animal. That guy has hunted men and been hunted.
Yeah.
That's not an easy path for anybody to walk who's lived that life, because he can literally go out and take what he wants. He doesn't do it. We're lucky with that. But no one knew that coming in.
Yeah. So how do you fix it? The wait in line is 10 years, 7 to 10 years to get any sort of really positive immigration benefit. Now you can eventually, someone could petition for you. You might be able to get lucky and get a green card or a lapper card, they call them. But what if you are really legitimately coming to the border with an asylum claim, but your story is the same as a million other people?
Yeah.
But it's legitimate. Now but the problem is the other, let's say out of 1 million people, 100,000 are legitimate asylum claims, but the other 900,000 are using that same exact story. How are you going to vet it out? You give them an asylum officer says errs on the side of caution. He says, okay, I'm going to let 95% in.
Yeah.
But if they never make it to the court, then you're never going to, they know what the deal is. Their case, they could either show up and get removed, or they could not show up and not get removed.
Is there a universe where less federal capacity is the answer for our immigration issues? Like, if the mantra is no more ICE, is that connected to reality as you know it?
No, because ICE does a lot more ICE's mission is twofold. I mean, I should actually say there's two branches. You have enforcement and removal operations, who does all immigration stuff, including repatriating aliens back to their native countries. They're the ones that go out and arrest migrants with final orders removal, fugitive operations, etc. But then the other 60% is Homeland Security investigations, who actually investigate narco traffickers, arms traffickers, money launderers, pedophiles. That's where your hero program is, where you take wounded special ops vets and they go after the pedophiles and the child pornography rings, human trafficking.
Right.
So if you get rid of ICE, you're getting rid of that whole aspect too. But in order to enforce America's immigration laws, you need some sort of mechanism. You need agents and officers. And if you don't have them, then it's fair game. And then if you can't go to the states and say, hey, go enforce our complex immigration laws. And, oh, by the way, we're not going to give you any funding and we're not going to give you any jail space or anything. Just go do it.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
Reach out to us on Twitter
at P. Turner,
or at JohnLG69.
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
And we're not going to give you any jail space or anything. Just go do it.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, crazy. When you really dig into like how complex these problems are, it's not. Have you heard anybody putting out a comprehensive policy that makes sense? We're going to ignore stuff like get rid of ICE because obviously it's not well thought out. I mean, unless they're for child pornography. Who's got the way ahead on this?
Nobody. I haven't seen one side, because the thing is, in order to have a way ahead, you have to meet somewhere in the middle. And I'm a huge proponent of saying, you know what, get a whole bunch of people that have that ground truth into the room. And these could be, if you want to get the full ground truth, get the people enforcing the laws, get the people with the legitimate asylum claims, get the people, these NGOs that help out those people, and sit them in a room with these lawmakers and say, hey, here's the reality. But you can't go down to the border and take a 15-minute photo op and then think that you're going to go and solve the border crisis or the immigration problems. They're just, and everything's so political now, so nothing's going to happen. So if there's someone out there right now that has the key to the golden kingdom of fixing the immigration problem, I'd love this. I'd love to know who it is.
So what you're saying is libtards are all snowflakes and they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
No, I'm going to say that it's right and left.
Yeah, no,
there's no middle ground. I mean, it's just,
yeah, absolutely. I'm playing around. I took a shot at the at the left the first time, so I wanted to come back and take a shot at the right. So yeah, I mean, this is the point, right? Like, this is not a political solution. It has to be an us solution. So we are going to have people emigrate. Whether someone likes that or not, there's just no way stopping it. I went to Johnny's swearing-in ceremony, and there basically were 1,500 new Americans in that one location getting sworn in that day. 1,500. How many
of them were so patriotic that it was unbelievable,
If you haven't, anybody listening, if you have not been to an induction ceremony, go and listen to that and tell me you're not, one, proud of being an American, two, proud of the people that bet everything, left their homeland, their motherland, their fatherland, however they look at it. They left their home, their ancestral home, to come here. And they said, I dare you to give me I dare you to give me a chance. Well, come on, let's go. Those are great Americans. I want them. There's no way you can feel any other way if you go to that. And one of the things all those people say is they will take up arms if legally ordered to do so and defend this nation, even against their old home nation. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. So
you've never seen anything like it. And one of the ICE offices I worked at was in Philly, and in the bottom floor they used to do the naturalization ceremonies. It was like they're coming out there with everybody gets an American flag and everything. And it's just, it's awe inspiring, especially as someone like you and I and everybody else have deployed overseas for our country. I mean,
Yeah.
it's great, and I love it. You'll find out a lot of people out there who are enforcing our immigration laws are actually very pro-immigrant.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like people want to assign you or me or somebody else a stance on this. It's like you don't know my stance, because I will tell you that the 1,500 people getting sworn in, absolutely the biggest roar was from Mexico. They had the biggest crowd, but the next biggest roar was for Johnny, and 85% of that crowd were SEALs. Mm-hmm. And if SEALs are a bunch of right-wing, kind of guys that hate immigrants, then why are they at Johnny Walker's ceremony?
No.
Why are they clapping, and several of them, including me, tearing up at what was happening there if we all hate immigrants so much? So instead of worrying about who hates immigration, let's understand how complex the problem is, how valuable our immigrants are to our nation.
And if you want to talk about laws, the harshest laws against, I shouldn't say against, but the strictest enforcement laws were made in the 1990s under Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where Gatekeeper came in. That's where I think it was IMAC 96.
Mm-hmm.
Elian Gonzalez, remember the little 5-year-old kid that we had to send a SWAT team
Cuba
to deport?
Yeah.
I mean, so everybody's been on one side of immigration. They've been on both sides of immigration. It just depends on which way the politics flow.
Yeah, it does depend, right?
But you and I bet you, 9 out of 10 people we talk to could probably say, hey, you know what? We should fix it.
Yeah.
And actually come up with a solution to fix it.
Yeah. The solution is interesting. So I'm going to take a crack at it. First off, you need a wider funnel at the top. You need more people being able to come in, which unfortunately, I don't know a way to do this other than to have a wall. And I don't think a wall is immoral. I think a wall is a moral thing to do. You have to have big gates to let people through. But if Mexico is the border of choice, we need to have some kind of control over that. And for those that want to say we should have a way to monitor, we have a way to monitor. We've had aerostats for 25 years watching people come across. We can't keep up with that, with all the people coming across. There's a lot of federal agencies involved. So, and I know I'm going to fail at this, Jason. So I'm going to take a shot. We need to flex in the capacity to talk to more of these people and have it's an expensive solution. I'm sorry. But basically you need to have, I don't know, let's say that there's 10,000 people a month on average that flood into this nation through our Mexican border. Let's just say you need to have almost 1-to-1 in terms of manning. Like you have to have someone to manage people and everything else. I don't know how you do it without creating 15,000 new federal jobs at the border.
No.
There's just no way to do it.
There's no way to do it. Well, you brought up a good point about the wall, and I always say this about a wall. It would have to be 2,000 miles to have the whole border fitted with a wall. It's just not practical.
Yeah.
But if you put it up like you do in the San Diego's, you put it up in certain areas, the funnel traffic, because then you could focus your technology and everything at those bare spots.
Right.
And I always tell people, I'm like, look, you have a ton of migrants coming through these porous areas of the border that are simply dying of exposure.
Yeah.
But if you have a wall and that funnels them into the country in certain areas, then at least you could put your rescue efforts there. You could put your Border Patrol BORSTAR, and a lot of people don't realize what BORSTAR is, but the Border Patrol has a whole units that go out there and their whole goal is search and rescue. So send them into those areas. Send the military out there to
get rid of the Border Patrol because they're bad.
You need them out there. And, if we're going to deploy troops to the border, it's got to be logistics only, too.
Yeah. We don't need more things.
I was on news somewhere the other day talking about this, and I was like, look, I've been in law enforcement for almost 20 years now, and, to give guns to people who aren't in law enforcement that don't know the use of force is a very dangerous thing. It's not like rules of engagement where you're going to go out there and go, oh, this guy's throwing a rock, shoot him. Because if you put that scenario up there, there's a lot of different factors that go with it.
Yeah.
So I am so not pro-arming the military on a border unless it's to protect their own life and limb, but not in actual enforcement.
Well, and there's a lot of legal problems with that anyhow, because our force is more of an expeditionary force. They're not supposed to be here. They're not supposed to be enforcing laws here. And when they do, it's supposed to be the Guard or the reserves that do something, under the governor's control, not the president.
Yeah.
So, then you just get more people peeing in the pool. The pool doesn't get clearer; it gets worse. But yeah, so my solution is 15,000 new agents that come in and work on creating.
But that's the thing right now is you can't hire enough agents.
Oh my God, that's true.
Right now, the Border Patrol has 750. They're in a negative right now. Each year, they're losing 750 to attrition or retirement.
Wow,
that's just the Border Patrol.
Yeah.
And then if you want to disrupt and dismantle these major criminal networks, whether here or abroad, you need special agents. And how long does it take to get a special agent through the pipeline?
Yeah.
6 months to a year, then train them up.
And then they're just green as hell, too.
Yeah, they need 3 years to get them up to snuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's such a big problem. And then you have to deal with what you've screwed up along the way as you ramp up this new, program. So let's say you did a mass amnesty again, right? And you scooped up more people, got them into the system. You're still going to have, and you have all the new agents. I did an interview, and it failed to record, but I did an interview with someone who was in the Alabama correction system. And the long story short is Hyundai decided they were going to open a plant down in that part of Alabama. And so they went from being struggling to maintain numbers at the prison with the corrections officers to losing tons of people because, one, would you rather work at a Hyundai plant with the real future and, be one of the first ones on the ground in there? And it's like, hey, you're promoted today because, shoot, we we got a bunch of jobs. Or would you rather go work in a prison that's underfunded, understaffed, underfed? She's like, we can't keep up with that. It's just a hard job. And from sitting across someone who's betting their life, they're talking to you. In Iraq, I set my needle to no. That's where I started. And then at some point, I'm like, this is dumb. My needle's on yes. And unless you say something to get my needle off of yes, they don't know this, but they're going to have a job. So I'm going to bring up pork. I'm going to talk about Islam in a way that's not correct. And if they can stomach all of that and be nice and explain it to me, you know what? I don't want to talk to you anymore. Get out of here, you crazy nut. You got a job. I want to help these people. But the next
me help you, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, and let's talk. Let's go to lunch real soon because I got to know who you are. But the guy next to me, absolutely, and this is 100% true. The guy next to me was like, nope, has ties to Taliban. He's fired. Like, what are you doing, dude? Well, he's gonna know where all our stuff is. Like, we live halfway up a mountain. Do you see how much mountain is above us? Anybody at any time can walk above us because we're not going to kill them for that. They can look down and they can. Oh, by the way, this is their land. Come on. It's so crazy.
So one thing that we've learned so far is that the border's broken, immigration's broken. It can be fixed, but it's going to take a huge, bipartisan ground truth solution. Mm-hmm. And we're going to need tons more people at the border. We need real vetting. We need real human. Because I tell you what, finding real collection assets, you're going to find one or two people that know what they're doing per group, but out of a group of 10 people, just as well as I do that, not many of them are made of the right stuff to do that collection.
Yeah. And that brings me to a different point. That's a point of contention for a lot of us. And by the way, I want to let the folks out there listening know, because you guys are my friends and I know you'll appreciate this note. Before we started, Jason's like, let's try to not talk about immigration. So,
and then we just talked about all immigration.
But I think we talked about it in a healthy way, because that's what we do, is we illustrate what the ground truth is on this show a whole bunch. And it's not as simple as if the moment politics is brought into immigration, I know the person isn't talking from a point of having understanding of what the fuck they're talking about. It's complex. So same thing with school shootings. You and I have counterintelligence backgrounds, spy versus spy. You and I both know that were we to surrender a little bit of privacy, we absolutely have the resources to identify, with the fairly good measure of accuracy. Will there be mistakes? Of course. But if we're talking about saving kids' lives, we could absolutely turn on the machines and do a better job of parsing through who's struggling with reality and considering and grabbing a gun. What are your thoughts on turning on our enormously powerful algorithmic searches that would help us to identify young people struggling or anybody struggling with reality and considering grabbing a gun in any mass shooting?
Well, it's funny that you brought this up, but I was actually talking to one of my friends yesterday about school shooting, arming teachers, mental health. And I'd say probably how many of these kids that go out and do the shooting have a mental health issue and are on some sort of antipsychotic, antidepressant drugs.
Yeah.
And then the thing comes down to arming teachers and, everything else. But let's say they are legally able to purchase a gun. Let's say this kid's 17, 18 years old or 18, and he can go and buy a gun. But if mental health never reported him and he has no criminal record, it always comes back to that old adage. If you've never been encountered and you've never been reported, then he's going to get that gun. But if you turn on that mechanism to find out what drugs people are getting prescribed,
right,
what kids are getting, and then follow that thread down to what mental health provider they're seeing, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And and this is the whole spying on Americans. And that's another problem. How do you get to that point where the mental health provider is going to say, hey, you know what? I'm seeing this kid. No, there's something wrong with him. And then does that ruin the kid's life?
Right.
So they have a record.
Yeah. Because you're going to have some false positives.
Definitely. And it is the government. So
yeah,
the lowest bidder is going to be out there, following up on some of this stuff.
And I want to say this out loud too, so people can understand when things like security and intel are farmed out to a contract company, and understand that has to be the way, because we don't want the government to be that big, and they're not good enough at it. That contract company at the highest level does not give two fucks about the capacity of the person sitting in that intel chair. I have been that guy sitting in the chair. Nobody cared if I did my job. My job was to be in a chair for 12 hours a day and not get into trouble.
And that's your contract.
That's my contract.
They have to, okay, let's say your contract says you have to have, because when I got back from Iraq, I worked in one of these locations where they hired tons of quote unquote intel people for collection.
Yeah.
You have a reservist who the only training they have in intel, it was their A school or their advanced school after basic training, and then all of a sudden they're now making $150,000 a year because we needed intel people back then for a contract.
Right.
So, and that's the kind of people you're going to get. So you can't farm this stuff out.
Yeah. You can't farm it out successfully, but you have to farm it out. And so the person who's we're looking for crazy, the kind of crazy that's going to shoot up a school, you are going to have some absolute heroes in there trying to do the right thing. And you're going to have some absolute people that are overwhelmed or don't care or can't care or going through a divorce and, or are trying to be superheroes and overplay their hand, and everybody becomes a criminal and they start pushing. So like these are really hard problems to solve, but going after, and I'm not saying that having better gun control is not a great idea, but going after guns in any kind of way means constitutional amendments or ignoring the Constitution, which is a dangerous thing. And it also completely ignores the planner's advantage. If I wanted to kill 250,000 people, I'm positive I'd come up with a way to do it.
Yeah.
I don't need a gun.
And then, but we do have one thing I wanted to touch on was this arming teachers.
Okay.
And now I know a lot of, what is your rules of engagement? What's your use of force continuum? Unless someone, poses a threat, are you just going to shoot them?
Right.
Some kid pulls a knife and is going to cut his own wrist. Do you shoot him?
Yeah.
Some kid's having a bad day, picks up a rock, wants to throw it at a teacher. Do you shoot him? But we also have how many hundreds of thousands of veterans out there and how much resources to hire armed professionals, trained people to come into a school.
Right.
But all these pet projects where they could take money of and pay, 2 employees $40,000 a year for an $80,000 a year budget to protect the school.
Yeah.
Because like you said before, there's always someone that goes on leave or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. Someone always blows out their knee or whatever it is. And let's understand that paying someone $40,000 a year to be a watchdog for your kids is not going to get you a quality guy. You're not going to hire me to do that. You're going to get somebody. And then,
Now to backtrack to when you get off of the major thoroughfares, and you live in Orange County, which is a big county.
Yeah.
But if you're in rural America where a cop is making $18 to $25 an hour, and then you're hiring someone for $40,000 a year, where the median income's $30,000, I'm just throwing out there as a number.
Yeah. Fair enough.
It has to equate to wherever you're living. So, it can't just be a living wage. It has to be a perk or a plus. This has to be one of those jobs where, you have a retired cop, you have a military member who has the right skills and who's going to go on a different training.
Yeah.
Who's going to be a watcher.
And we've covered this a little bit, but just to backtrack, you guys should listen to the episode with Ty Smith, who's a CEO, and he talks about driving the weapon. He's not shooting a weapon. He's driving it. He's in perfect control of it. He understands what he's doing. And listen to the Tim Kennedy episode, same kind of conversation and what it takes to maintain their level of proficiency. And if you think that the level of proficiency to shoot in a mass shooting situation with a whole bunch of young people and variables is anything less than that level, you're crazy. You're crazy. There's no teacher that has time to go out and develop, not on a mass scale. You cannot develop a faculty that is lethal enough to handle that thing. Maybe one or two of them, and that's their hobby and their passion. But if it's part of their job, forget it. It's not a thing.
Well, you and I both started the Army in the 90s, and my wife was intel in the 90s too, and she went to an awesome conference out in I think it was Denver, where they had a whole bunch of Interpol type people come in and say, you know what? In the next few decades, you're going to see schools getting targeted.
Yeah.
What happened in Russia?
Yeah.
And that's going to happen here eventually. It's not just going to be lone shooters. It's going to be lone jihadists or lone bad actors. And I hate throwing that word out there, jihadists. It's just going to be some bad actor working on behalf of someone else or themselves.
I don't mind throwing the word jihadist out there. It's a fair thing to say that there are people out there that are founded in Islam, and they take it at the fundamental level. And it doesn't mean that all folks that embrace Islam are bad, but there are a lot of bad people from Islamic-based countries that are willing to be exploited for very negative things. And yes, there are bad Christians. Yes, there are bad atheists. But the people creating the biggest booms around the world, driving vans into populations, are by and large Islamic.
And who said that to do that?
Yeah.
The call the jihad was 2012 or was it 2000? I can't remember
which one.
What year the Al Qaeda call. Yeah. So my dissertation, what was it for my doctoral dissertation? It was disrupt aiding state and local jurisdictions with federal resources to prevent lone wolf terror attacks. And that was, my basis around that was saying, you know what? There is such a disconnect between a lot of these state and locals and federals. You have the big elephant in the room. The FBI comes in and says, we only work big picture stuff. But, your state and local guys they're their boots on the ground. They're seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
And one of the big things was just sharing resources. And one of the big things I brought up in that paper was social media mining too. Because how many of these guys preface their events with some sort of tweet or some sort of Facebook or some sort of blurb on social media because they don't want to go unannounced. They want that.
Yeah, that's part of their deal. Right.
Yeah.
It's part of the terrorism factor. Yeah, I mean, the point, I guess, of this whole episode, and it's been awesome to have you on. Thank you very much, Dr. Piccolo. I should have said that up front.
Oh, but that's okay, man.
But these problems that we try to solve with intel and law enforcement and immigration people These are not simple problems. There really are no simple problems left at the federal level for the government. It's all stuff that is exceptionally hard to get right. I mean, yes, we should help people out, and there should be a safety net. Now, show me all the people that get out of the safety net reliably when the government takes over and starts paying people. Like, they suck at that. You know, yes, we should have a little bit more money in the middle class. Capitalism struggles with that, but so does the government. You know, like, these aren't things that are like, oh, if you just let the government redistribute it, it'd be fine. Like, oh, really?
The government is not going to save you.
Yeah, the government's not going to save you. I understand the belief that we need more government. I understand the belief that we need less government. But we're talking about things that are very hard to solve, and they don't. And the answers don't come with all benefits. There's always negative benefits. I can fix medical right now. There's no problem. I can make a plan up that'll be significantly better than what we have. But everybody has to give up what they have now and be ready to take something that'll be comparably shitty on the other end. Like, it's just, yes, we could do a better job, but the line to get people to accept all the sacrifices to get what's better, it ain't very long.
No. And, you know, these problems can be solved, but unfortunately, it's either they're going to take a catastrophic event or it's going to have to take something to get everybody back at the table. Because, you know, my viewpoint is this is, you know, there was always that wall between intel and law enforcement. That's hence 9/11. But what are we having right now? I mean, everybody needs a budget. Everything is so political. Nobody wants to work with ICE. Nobody wants ICE in their thing. But if ICE is going to be the ones out there finding these bad guys, man, I don't know. What are you going to do?
I do not know.
Because here's one thing people have to understand about ICE. ICE, anything that, let's say, Homeland Security investigations, which is HSI, part of ICE, anything that has an international nexus, they work.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people don't realize they work so much narcotics because where does most 99% of narcotics come from? Internationally.
Yep.
Now, DEA has their international arms, but the DEA is domestic. So anything with that international footprint is ICE. And where do bad guys, terrorists come from? And we're not talking to white supremacists, you know.
Yeah.
Then all 9/11 guys came from overseas. So if you get rid of ISIS, not ISIS, but if you get rid of ICE, then you're gonna be stepping back into the pre 9/11.
Jason Piccolo, everybody, thank you so much for coming on, and I dig it. I love having people on that are smart and understand the complex nature of these things and how these problems don't. These are not werewolves. It's not a silver bullet that's going to kill them. It's just you could shoot 100 silver bullets into immigration and do a great job at screwing everybody's life up. You know, it's
my book goes over it too. Unwavering, a border agent's journey from hunter to hunted came out last month, and I talk about my time on a border, and I also talk about my time in the working under the Obama administration's human smuggling cells. So, I mean, a lot of good stories in there about the border. So if you want to pick that up, that'd be cool.
Where do you pick that book up at?
Either Amazon or protectorstore.com.
I'm going to tell you right now, buy it on Amazon. And then when you guys do 5 stars and do a review, because it makes Amazon bump it up in their rankings. The higher it gets in the rankings, the more they feature it, the more books Jason sells. If you want to go straight to Jason, of course, do that. And that's always a good way to go. But
yeah, I just do the Protector Store for like the signed copies and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, definitely go to Amazon. It's awesome. I love it.
Everybody, go support Jason. His books are great. His work is great. He's a great dude. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.